Hello and welcome to another episode of Snakes Territory. I am Jesse Friedman alongside Jack Sommers, who's wearing a lovely t-shirt that you can get over at snakesterritoryshop.com. Shameless plug. Jack, it was a big weekend for the Arizona Diamondbacks as they made a statement, and they absolutely needed to if they're going to try to turn this thing around and get the Diamondbacks to think seriously about actually buying at the trade deadline that's about 10 days away. They needed to make a statement, and they came out and swept the Cardinals and outscored them 22-7. It was really exactly what the doctor ordered.
They played almost a perfect series. They completely dominated the Cardinals. Mike Hazen earlier said they don't need to win all of the games, but I kind of disagree with him there. At least these first six or seven or eight, I think they need to win all of them to really put themselves on the map and in the right direction.
The story of the weekend, of course, was one Eugenio Suárez, who already during the All-Star break and for a number of weeks now has been making all sorts of headlines. He's been involved in all sorts of rumors. Every fan base in the league, it feels like, wants Eugenio Suárez on their team down the stretch. And those rumors have only intensified the past few days because Gino had himself quite a series, 4 home runs combined between Saturday and Sunday's games. He drove in 7 in the series. He now has 35 home runs on the season. He has 55 home runs in his last 162 games dating back to last year. All of these numbers don't even feel real.
Torrey talked about how professional that Eugenio was at setting up Sonny Gray. When that second homer got off the slider on the pitched a little bit off the plate. That was in response to the fact that Gray didn't want any part of the inner half of the plate after the first 3-run homer or 2-run homer, pardon me, in the first inning. So I just think the way he set up Gray and was ready to pounce on that pitch on the outer half really set the tone. And then he came into the series 7 for 17 with 2 homers against Miles Michaelis, and he improved those numbers quite a bit already. Now he's 9 for 19 against him with 4 homers. So that's really impressive that he's just been able to continue to dominate that pitcher.
I know we've talked about this before, but we really can't talk about it enough. Eugenio Suárez is not just a big story for the Diamondbacks. He's really one of the best stories in all of baseball right now. I mean, this is a guy who 1 year ago, Jack, we were having pretty serious conversations about the end of Gino Suarez's career. And sometimes this happens with power hitters, right? You get to a point where you just don't have the bat speed anymore or whatever it might be, and you're just not running into those home runs like you're used to doing in the past, and it looks really ugly. Last July 20th, he had an OPS of 658, and since then, as I mentioned earlier, he has 55 home runs, literally in the span of 162 games. I don't recall ever seeing a player. I'm sure it's happened, but I do not recall in my experience, ever seeing a player turn their career around to this degree.
Last year, when he first started to get hot and turn around his season, they talked about having him switch over to a higher intensity pregame workout, going off for higher velocity on the traject machine, and just doing some things differently, which he accepted that input in coaching. And I have to be completely honest, I was somewhat skeptical that that was really so sustainable or that was really going to be such a big difference maker for him. But it's carried over into this year, and he's talked about it again several times this year as this great season has unfolded. So, sometimes, I mean, again, we're dealing with human beings and subtle changes in routine or preparation, giving you a little bit different sight line. I mean, the raw talent to hit a baseball very far, very frequently, has always been there with him, but we thought he was kind of starting to age out. But he found a way, with the help of the staff. And a lot of times we talk about the coaching staff, but I don't think that the hitting coaches get enough credit on this team. For 2 years running now, the D-backs have had, if not the best, top 3 offenses in the league, and it's a lot of different hitters. Overcoming slumps, new guys coming in, having great seasons, existing players just getting better. So I think we really need to give a lot of credit to Joe Mather and his hitting coaches.
With Gino, what's really remarkable to me is that this isn't just him getting back to the player that he was in his prime, which would also be really impressive, right? I mean, if this was, Gino getting back to what he did in 2018, 2019, I mean, that would be really remarkable. But this is the best season that Gino's ever had, Jack. I mean, after today, he has a 929 OPS. He's slugging over 600. I mean, he's a very accomplished hitter. Don't get me wrong. He has over 300 career home runs. He had a really big season back in 2019, as I referenced. He had 49 homers that year. But Gino has never had an OPS plus north of 136. And it hasn't updated for me yet as of the end of this Sunday game. But I think it's in the 150s at this point. I mean, it's way better than we've ever seen Gino turn in before. And this is a guy who turned 34 years old just a couple of days ago.
Yeah, I mean, there's 62 games to go, so those numbers may or may not maintain at that level. I got teased a little bit online because last time we spoke, I presented the Fangraphs projections, which projected him to hit 12 more home runs. So he's ahead of that pace. He's already hit 4 of those 12.
Throw your projections out the window, Jack.
They're
They're
not.
completely irrelevant. Well, of course, it was
They're
not
not
all
my
Gino.
projections. They're Fangraphs.
That's fair. That's fair. That's a good point. Well, as much as Gino got most of the attention over the weekend, the D-backs got contributions from a number of different players, including Corbin Carroll. Another guy we definitely need to touch on here. In the Sunday game, Corbin did the same thing that he did in the Saturday game, where he hit a triple in the first inning. He, of course, had 2 triples in the Saturday game and arguably should have had 3 if Blaze Alexander didn't sort of get in his way at one point during that game. But I know at times, Jack, we've been maybe critical that Corbin is selling out for power, that maybe you would like to see him draw a few more walks and hit some more singles and push his on base percentage up a little bit, even if it's at the expense of some of the power numbers he's put up. But it's hard to argue with Corbin going, I think it was 5 for 13 in the series with 3 triples. Like you'll take that too.
Yeah, leading off games with triples makes up for a lot of strikeouts and pop ups, right? It just does. But look, this is. I think it's relevant to the overall conversation with Corbin. You still need him to be a well-rounded hitter. He's selling out for power, but at the same time, it really is impacting his batting average and OBP. And you want to see a guy like that with that kind of talent to find a way to get on base a little bit more. But it seems churlish to make that complaint now after the last 2 games that he has had. But I think it's just, people should look at his career batting average and on base percentage and kind of accept that that's probably where he's going to be at. He may have a great season or two where he's going to be above those numbers. But if you look at his career batting average and OBP, they're above average, but they're not, all-star level. It's the power that makes him an all-star. And that's ironic, I guess, because of his size and everything. But he's a power hitter that runs really fast.
I guess if you're kind of dreaming on what Corbin could maybe do in the future, it would be, could he combine what he was in 2023, where he had a 362 on base percentage and a whole bunch of stolen bases? Could you take some of that and kind of combine it with what we've seen this year, where he's also, I mean, he has 21 home runs already. I think it's pretty reasonable to think he could hit 30 by the end of the year. Is there a world where Corbin could maybe combine those aspects of his game together? But yeah, we're maybe getting a little picky here with a guy who has an 892 OPS and has been a huge, huge contributor to this offense this season. In the Sunday game, Jack, the D-backs offensively, it was not quite as big of a day for them as they had on Friday, or certainly on Saturday when they scored 10 runs. But between the Gino 2 home runs, Corbin Carroll's triple where he scored on a Geraldo Perdomo fielder's choice in the first inning, that play was also notable because I think Corbin was one of very few players in the majors who could have actually scored on that play. It was the contact play with a runner at third and 1 out that we see not work often. But Corbin is one of the guys who can actually score on that. And really it was those 2 guys is really the engine of the offense on Sunday, and throughout the weekend as a whole as well.
Well, I wrote a comment, and let's not forget Perdomo. I mean, he had 7 RBIs in this series,
Yeah.
right? He had 3 RBI singles, in the, middle game. He had a base hit and a ground out RBI. I mean, in total, he had 7 RBIs in this series. So I wrote something today, uh, in my series takeaways, and I said, "If Suarez is the engine of the offense at the moment, Corbin Carroll is the spark plug, and Geraldo Perdomo is the oil that makes it all run smooth." Now they just need to get back Ketel Marte to turbocharge the whole thing.
And that is remarkable to think about how they did this over the weekend. They scored 22 runs without arguably their best hitter in Ketel Marte. I mean, it just makes it all the more impressive. Of course, Diamondbacks starting pitching was also very good in this series. Merrill Kelly worked around some trouble in the fifth inning. We're going to talk about that as well as some other notes from the series. We'll do that on the other side of this break. Nothing says summer like long days, clutch plays, and firing off a few bets on the game, all with DraftKings Sportsbook. If you've never bet on baseball before, it's easy. Pick a guy to go yard, hammer some live odds mid-game, or just ride with your squad and hope for the best. Here's something special for first-timers. New DraftKings customers bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code FOUL. That's code FOUL for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort. 21 plus, age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario, new customers only. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. Well, Jack, Merrill Kelly was pretty good in the game on Sunday, as were all D-back starters over the course of the weekend. What do you think about Merrill in particular?
It was a little odd that he walked 4 batters, 3 in a row to load the bases with nobody out. Ended up only giving up 1 run in that scenario, which was, pretty gutsy. But overall, I mean, you can't complain. Another quality start, 6 innings, 2 runs, on top of what the team got out of Ryan Nelson and Brandon Pfaadt earlier in the series. Really tremendous stuff.
The Diamondbacks are now 32-9 this season when they get a quality start from their starting pitcher. And of course, they went 3 for 3 in that regard over the weekend. Looking at some broader takeaways from the series here, Jack. Of course, we've talked about Suarez, Carroll, and Perdomo and the crazy numbers that all three of those guys put up. But Ryan Nelson is also worthy of a shout out here. I know the Diamondbacks won big in that game on Saturday. They didn't necessarily need Nelson to be as good as he was, but nonetheless, it doesn't take anything away from the fact that he was very good once again.
Yeah, and the fact that he went 6 and, they got 19 total innings from their starting staff, and it's not on the screen, but I think the bullpen deserves a shout out too. They got some pretty good long relief work from Jake Woodford and then Anthony DeSclafani. Curtis had a little bit of an issue there in the 9th inning in the first game, but overall, I mean, the bullpen also picked up 8 innings and gave up only 4 runs. I guess
Yeah,
only is
absolutely.
a strange way to put it, but it's still pretty good comparatively.
Yeah, I mean, and in some ways, I don't want to discredit what the bullpen did do in this series because you're right. That group was actually pretty good, all said and done. But this also feels like the way that the Diamondbacks kind of need to win games moving forward. Where if you get a really solid outing from your starting pitcher and your offense is able to do what the D-backs offense did in this series, it can make it so that your bullpen just isn't that much of a factor, right? I mean, not to take anything away from Woodford or DeSclafani, but those guys were pitching with decent sized leads, especially Woodford. DeSclafani came in with a 3-run game, so that was a little bit more of a competitive situation. But still, I think given the state of this bullpen, the more the Diamondbacks can avoid using their relievers in some high stress situations, the more they're going to do what they did this weekend.
Right. One other point I wanted to make in my series takeaways, I felt like there was a whiff of, I don't want to call it chaos, but the type of baseball that the Diamondbacks started to play in the second half of 2022 and throughout much of 2023, and that seemed to have gotten away from them the last couple of years. As much as the headlines have been about Gino's home runs, Corbin's triples, the stolen bases, Perdomo with 2 stolen bases, and his 6 hits or 7 hits, they were all singles, right? I don't think he had an extra base hit,
I think
but
Perdomo had 1 double, but everything else
okay.
was a single, I think, yeah.
Thank you for the correction. but but the point being is that they played good defense. There was only 1 error in the 3 games, which was actually ironically a Perdomo throwing error, and then Alec Thomas making that terrific catch on Friday. There were elements to this series that made me feel like, okay, maybe that team can come back here. Gino looked a little sharper on defense on a couple of plays, so. Which is the only criticism we've really had of him this year, is that sometimes the defense hasn't quite been there for him. So I also think that Gino is likely the one that stood up in the clubhouse and echoed some of Torrey's sentiments. We heard about that earlier in the week, and I think that he's really stepped forward and said, hey, I want to stay here. I don't want to get traded. Let's go forward together and figure this out and play the right kind of baseball. I think that was Gino. He's kind of echoing some of those thoughts in some of his public comments now. And I just get a really pretty strong sense that he's taken on the mantle of leadership, as opposed to just the good vibes guy.
Hmm. Yeah, that's really interesting. And I guess that brings us to the larger conversation here of like, great, the Diamondbacks swept the Cardinals. That means they're 50-50. What on earth does that mean for what they're going to do in the next 10 days, right? If we look at the standings, here's where things stand currently. The Diamondbacks gained 1 game on that 3rd wild card spot. The Padres did lose to the Nationals once over the weekend, so Nationals did the D-backs a slight favor there. So the D-backs are now 4.5 games out of that 3rd wild card spot, but they still would have to jump 4 teams in order to get there. The Cardinals, the Giants, and the Reds are also sitting between them and that 3rd wild card spot. Granted, the Giants got swept over the weekend, so the D-backs are only 2 games behind the Giants now, and of course they swept the Cardinals, so they're only 1 game behind St. Louis at this point. So things have tightened up here, Jack, but I'd be lying if I said you look at the standings and you're like, oh man, I mean, this is exactly what they needed. Now they're right back in the thick of things.
They have a ways to go. Mike Hazen himself, Sunday morning, said things are precarious, and
Yeah.
that's still the case. I mean, their playoff odds went from 15.7% to 19.2. That's still basically a Hail Mary shot, right? That's where they're at as of right now today. They have to continue on. They have no choice. This is it. They have to go out and at least take 2 or 3 from the Astros, or even try to sweep them. Which they have an opportunity to do if they keep playing like this. But losing that series is absolutely off the table. Now, if they go and sweep the Astros, if they can pull it off again, that really might change the calculus. Mike Hazen made some really interesting comments. He said most of the calls he's been getting are from other teams thinking that he's dead. They're dead in the water. He didn't blame them for saying that. He goes, everybody can look at it and do the math. He said right now he's probably still in that buy sell scenario. So I think that at this point he's not given up. He's kind of cracked open the window a little bit, like he could still be buying. And we've kind of joked both online and privately, at this point in time, there's going to be a pretty big revolt from the fan base if they trade Gino. And
Yeah.
that's where all the biggest rumors are coming from. And that's where, they can probably get the best return. So, he's between a rock and a hard place. He's in a really tough spot. And the only way to get him out of that tough spot is to just keep ripping off wins. I mean, they really can't stumble. They got to sweep the Astros. I'll just come right out and say it. They have to do that.
You think they have to sweep the Astros?
Yes.
That's a must.
Yes.
Huh. What makes you feel that way?
Because I don't think that they're going to pick up any ground in the standings just winning 2 out of 3.
Yeah.
And then you're down to only 6 more games before the July 31st. Right?
Yeah.
So, and 3 of those against the Detroit Tigers in Detroit. You got 3 in Pittsburgh and 3 in Detroit. So, you really need to to go out there and just stomp on this. They have to do it.
Yeah, on some level, this felt inevitable, Jack. I know you and I have kind of joked about this, that the moment you kind of count the Diamondbacks out, they come back and they do something like this and they make it interesting again. It sort of feels like they're just really set on giving Mike Hazen the biggest headache he's ever had about a week from now when he tries to figure out what the final verdict is here. He's not gonna they're not gonna make it an easy decision for him. That much seems clear. And it is a really interesting situation with the fan base as well. You alluded to this. I think Mike Hazen would have a lot of people angry at him for trading Geno Suarez. And I think he also would have a lot of people angry at him for keeping Geno Suarez. There's a pretty large contingent of Diamondbacks fans that I think are excited about what happened this weekend and yet still don't really believe that this team is actually going to finish the job here and is actually capable of jumping all these teams, overtaking the Padres or whatever team that would be to actually make the playoffs. And so I think there's a lot of people out there, Jack, that are totally fine with the Diamondbacks still just punting on this season and trying to get as much as they possibly can, not only for Geno, but for some of these other expiring contracts as well.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, there's a lot of people out there, but I think that we're a little bit more exposed to those people that think that way, because the more engaged and intense fans that actually cover the details of guys being a rental versus however many years of control. I mean, most fans, we have to remember, I'm not talking, I don't want to be condescending. I'm not at all, but most fans don't follow it as closely as our listeners and the people that follow us on Twitter and engage with us on Twitter. They just don't follow it that closely. So all they know is Geno Suarez is going crazy and hitting 35 homers. Why would you trade that guy? That's 80-90% of the fan base.
Right.
And so, but they spend probably more money than everybody else, right? Because the ones that show up at the games, in and out. I mean, they're spending money. So, I think that that's definitely a factor that is under consideration for the team. They probably can't give a lot of lip service to that part of the equation. It is what it is, though. They back their GM into a corner, and the only way to let him out of that corner is to rip off like 5 more in a row.
Or lose 5 in a row. That would back
Yeah.
him out of the corner too.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to say, because, we've had a lot of people wondering why we're not kind of engaging more in the trade speculation and uh, package speculation and which players are coming and going. And the first thing I want to say is it's not absolutely 100% clear that they're going to be buyers or sellers. Mike used the phrase today. We're buyer seller. We're still in that mode, and he talked about the dial and which way it's pointing. Hard one way or hard the other. And I think that that's kind of where he's at. So if we're hearing from the GM that he's still stuck in the middle and
Yeah.
hasn't decided, then it's really hard to sit here and say, well, you can get this guy, you can get that guy, or what's this package, or is the latest package we're seeing online, is that a legitimate rumor? I mean, I know Mike Hazen isn't telling anybody which players they're talking about. I don't know where that information is coming from. I'm not saying that other people don't have sources, but I don't think Brian Cashman is out there speaking to the press saying, yeah, I've offered these 5 prospects for Geno Suarez and Merrill Kelly
Yeah.
and Jalen Beeks. I don't think he's doing that. Maybe he is. I don't know. I know Mike Hazen isn't.
I think this early in the process, I'm going to be pretty skeptical of any specific names that are thrown around. We know that teams are making phone calls and right now, but I think July 20th, this is more when teams are kind of doing their due diligence and checking in. You're probably not having a ton of super specific trade conversations at this point. At least I wouldn't think so. And so that's going to make me certainly more skeptical of some of those names being thrown around than I would be like a week from now. Of course, Jack, one of the biggest variables in what the Diamondbacks do or don't do here at the trade deadline is the qualifying offer. We keep talking about it, whether the Diamondbacks are going to extend qualifying offers to all four of these big expiring contracts that we keep talking about, or maybe it's just Geno Suarez and that's it. We have some new sort of thoughts that we've heard from around the league on that subject. So we are going to dive into that on the other side of this break.
Time for a quickie break. Todd Father and I are going to tell you about Huel, but it's mostly going to be Todd Father because I'm going to take a sip.
Well, we're talking about Huel, 27 vitamins and minerals. It's a complete meal. Let's listen. We all have busy schedules. As Scott's sipping it down, it looks delicious. It tastes delicious. When we're on the run, we need something to eat quick. And guess what? Huel is there, all different flavors. Scotty loves them. I love them. And I love how variety packed it is, and we can eat them any time of the day.
That's right. Yeah, check out the website. There's bars. There are so many different flavors. I love the black edition. Chocolate, 35 grams of protein. There's strawberry shortcake, coffee caramel, cookies and cream. I can go on. And you get yourself 15% off if you're a new customer using the code FOUL at Huel.com/foul. Please see our description for the terms and conditions. Skip the stress, not the nutrition. Try Huel today for complete nutrition with the code FOUL at Huel.com/foul.
Well, once again, just to make sure everybody knows what a qualifying offer is and how it works before we dive into this conversation, a qualifying offer is basically a 1-year contract at, I think it's like the mean of the top 120 paid players, something like that. We expect it to be around $21 million for this upcoming season. So it's a 1-year, roughly $21 million contract that you can offer to anyone who is a free agent. There are some caveats there, but for the purposes of our conversation, all of the D-backs players that we're going to talk about are eligible for the qualifying offer. And the reason that this is a big deal for a team like the D-backs is that if you give a player a qualifying offer and they reject it, then you get draft pick compensation. If that player signs for $50 million or more with another team, you get a draft pick after the first round in next year's draft. Or if they sign somewhere else for less than $50 million, then that draft pick would be basically after the second round, which is significant. Those are significant assets for a team like the Diamondbacks. And we talked about this recently, Jack. I think in the last time we touched on this, we were kind of maybe of the belief that Eugenio Suárez was at the top of the list. Like, this is someone we really feel confident is going to get a qualifying offer. Maybe Zach Gallen would be next on the list, but we weren't really so sure. I know you asked Ken Rosenthal this question basically on his Fair Territory show a few days ago, and he wasn't really speaking to what he thought the Diamondbacks would do as much as he was just speaking as a very experienced baseball mind of like, this is what I would do. And Ken Rosenthal was like, I'd give qualifying offers to all four of these guys. I mean, all four of them are good players, and I don't think you're going to feel like you're in a disaster scenario if you sign any of these guys to that 1-year, $21-ish million deal.
Yeah, the concept there is exactly what you said. I mean, if you had any one of them for $21 million, you're probably going to be okay because it's only a 1-year deal. The odds that all four of them would accept the qualifying offer are virtually zero. So you don't really have to worry about blowing up your budget. So, there's a world there where you keep all four of those guys, you add a couple of relievers, maybe you trade, you do a prospect deal where you're trading a prospect and maybe one of your depth pieces off your major league roster and go try to, get somebody that's close to major league ready next year, which is what Mike's talking about when he's doing buy and sell.
Right.
Right. And so maybe that's the way they end up going, is just hold on to them and give them more qualifying offers and take the draft picks. I kind of after listening to Ken's comments, obviously it gave me pause to some of my own previously held opinions. I'm not completely convinced one way or the other what's the right way to go here, but this information that came from Ken is really important to consider. And what I also did was I went and kind of canvassed around the press box to some of the smarter minds that we associate with. And they seem to, all to a man think that, yeah, Ken's right. Just make those offers. Is almost all of them would probably get over $50 million worth of a deal anyway. Very convinced that Josh Naylor would because of his age. You talked about that previously. Gino probably does. I mean, there is the age factor, but if he keeps doing what he's doing, we did talk about the Christian Walker deal, right? 3 years, $60 million. I mean, that's not hard to imagine, or 250 something and, some kind of opt out or option plan on the back end. Merrill Kelly, I mean, you're not taking any risk by paying him $21 million next year, should he accept that. And if he doesn't, I mean, yeah, because of his age, maybe him getting over 50 was a little tight, but that's okay. I mean, the worst case scenario is you get a later compensation pick, which still has value.
Yeah, and just to make sure people know, the reason that the D-backs might not just give qualifying offers to all these guys, I know you alluded to it, but I just want to make sure people understand, is that there is a risk in somehow all four of them accepting. And then, great, you have Zach Gallen, Merrill Kelly, Josh Naylor, and Geno Suarez all coming back next year, but you also just added $84 million to your payroll to do it. And based on some of the preliminary calculations that we've done, the D-backs probably don't have $84 million to spend in total this offseason, much less just on, retaining these four players. So there is some complicated calculus here, some risk assessment that you kind of have to do. I know with Zach Gallen in particular, you've made this comment before, Jack, that because Scott Boras is his agent, do we really think that Zach Gallen, even given the season he's had, do we really believe that he's just going to punt on free agency essentially and sign for 1 year and $21 million? It seems like Boras could at least land some sort of opt-out scenario, some sort of player option or something like that, in addition to a 1 year guarantee. So 21 million is a decent amount for one season. So you can't say it's impossible, but I have a hard time imagining Boras accepting that. And if you don't feel like he's going to accept it, then you probably should just give him the qualifying offer, because then you're very likely getting some kind of draft pick compensation.
Yeah, I think it really, at the end of the day, it still comes back to performance, right? Zach has a dozen starts left, give or take, at least 11, maybe 12 starts, somewhere in there. And so I think that if he manages to get his ERA, say, under 4.5, meaning that, he's in the 3 range or 3 plus over the next dozen starts, it's like, great, fixed, he's back. And then he's back in that high dollar territory. But if he finishes the year with a 5+ ERA and it doesn't get any better, then that really changes a lot of what other teams are going to be willing to go ahead and put out there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I would point to maybe like a Blake Snell from last season, where he was awful and hurt in the first half of the season, and then he was one of the best pitchers in baseball down the stretch. And what do you know? He gets over $180 million. The same thing could happen to Zach Gallen. I don't know to that extent necessarily, but Gallen still could get over $100 million. I don't think that's off the table at this point. If he were to somehow in his last 14 starts or whatever it is, rattle off, like a 3.00 ERA or something, his value is going to skyrocket back up, because he has the track record, and teams would start to view the first half of this season as more of a blip on the radar than anything else. So, I don't know. What do you think of that, Jack? Am I going crazy there?
I think he's got to pitch really well to get there. The Snell example is somewhat relatable, but he's got to pitch really well. I mean, there's 62 games left. He's got 12 starts, 1 out of every 5.
Yeah, right.
Maybe they skip somebody or whatever. Maybe he gets a 13th start. He's got to do really well. I mean, he can't do this one good, one bad thing the rest of the way. He's got to get on a roll, or he's not going to get that kind of payday. I mean, if he's at a 5 ERA at the end of the year, forget about it. I mean, like, he's going to be lucky to get, 240 with an option.
I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that, because of the track record that he has, his age, and just the demand of starting pitching. I mean, we saw Frankie Montas this last year. What did Frankie Montas sign for again? It was like 2 and 37 or something like that.
I'm not the only one that can look up his game logs from All-Star break 2023 to now.
That's true.
You know,
Gallon has been trending in a negative direction. There's no doubt. I guess Montas was 117 with it's a player option beyond that. So yeah, I
yeah,
think it was basically a 30-something million dollar guarantee. So anyway, it's hard to predict, and there's still a wide range of possible outcomes there with Zach Gallen, I guess, is kind of the main point.
yeah.
To finish things off here, Jack, the Diamondbacks, of course, have a very big series coming up against the Houston Astros. All of these series are very, very important for them, especially right now. And we have an idea of what the starting pitching matchups are going to look like. It is Zach Gallen going in the Monday game against Colton Gordon, a young lefty for the Astros. He's scheduled to start on Monday. And then it's Framber Valdez going for the Astros on Tuesday. Of course, one of the best pitchers in baseball against Eduardo Rodriguez. And then that last game, Jack, we have Brandon Pfaadt scheduled on the Diamondback side and officially TBD listed on the Astros side. But I know you have an idea of maybe who we could see in that game.
Well, Fangraphs has Walter. What's Walter's first name? Sorry,
Brandon Walter, I believe it
Brandon
is.
Walter. Thank you. Yes,
Not exactly a household name.
yeah. He's got some decent numbers for a lefty. The point being is he should be a third lefty, right? The D-backs have struggled against lefties, but if it's not Walter, it could be Lance McCullers.
Yeah.
So that, I don't know if they're going to move McCullers up into that slot or not, unless there's an injury that we don't know about. Speaking of injuries, the Astros have a lot of injuries in their positional lineup. Jordan Alvarez is not going to make it back for this series, from what I'm have read. He's still not going to make it back until the weekend after this series. They just lost Isaac Paredes to a hamstring injury. And Pena is still out with that broken rib for a while. So those are three pretty big bats for them that are not in the lineup. And they won big 11-3 against the Mariners on Sunday, but they're 2-7 in their last 9. So it's not who you play, it's when you play them. The Astros have not been playing their best baseball, and they're very injured. So there's an opportunity here. Obviously, you can circle that middle game of one that you got to find a way to steal. And that's the only way you can describe Valdez against Rodriguez, is if you win that game, you stole it, sadly. But I'll stick to what I said. They need to sweep. They need to find a way to get it done.
Yeah, it's a much different look Astros team than what we're used to seeing in the past. Of course, Kyle Tucker is no longer there. Alex Bregman is no longer there. And then with Yordan Alvarez on the injured list, as well as Jeremy Pena, yeah, it's gonna be a bit of a different look this time around. Of course, Christian Walker is a member of the Houston Astros. That seems worth noting. He makes his return to Chase Field over the next few days. Should be fun to see Christian Walker out at the ballpark. Jack, unfortunately for Walker, someone who is very easy to root for, great guy that you and I have had many, many conversations with over the past few years. Things haven't gone his way so far in Houston. He comes in with a 669 OPS, 13 homers, 50 RBIs. Maybe on some level, you're like, yeah, the Diamondbacks might have been smart to do what they did. I know a lot of people wanted to see Christian Walker return. The D-backs decided not to go that direction. But at the same time, you also really want to see Walker succeed, and that has not really happened this year.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing him and saying hello. Like you said, he's a terrific person to talk to. You always walk away feeling like you learned something and you're a little bit smarter about the game of baseball. And he'll make you chuckle with his very sly and dry sense of humor at times as well. As far as Christian Walker, the player, he's done some really great things in his career, and I wouldn't count him out. He's played a little bit better overall. I mean, he started off super, super bad. So, maybe he finishes off and gets a good kick down here, down the stretch. Just wait till next week to let that totally kick in.
Of course, Jack, he did have a pretty good series when the Astros were at Dodger Stadium just a few days ago. Unsurprisingly, just like clockwork, Christian Walker somehow still owns Dodger Stadium.
He
but yes,
never turned over the deed. He did not turn over the deed just because he changed uniforms.
apparently not. Yeah, the Houston Astros, again, despite their recent struggles, they are still a very good baseball team. They come in 57-42. first in the AL West, one of the best records in all of baseball. Still, just I think a couple games shy of that, even though they've really struggled here recently. So a tough matchup for the Diamondbacks, and as you said, they probably need to sweep. So we'll see if they're able to do that once again here over the next few days. Thank you to all of you for being with us on this episode. We really appreciate it. Once again, if you haven't already gotten your merch over at snakesterritoryshop.com, Jack is our model here on the show. There are t-shirts, there's hoodies, there's all sorts of other stuff. So we really appreciate it if you'd support us by going over there and finding something that looks nice to you. You can find us on social media. I am at Jesse N. Friedman. Jack is at ShoeWizard59. Our show is at Snakes Territory. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, drop a comment. We love hearing from you guys. And if you're joining us on an audio-only platform, we really appreciate those 5-star reviews as well. Those help us out a lot. Thank you to all of you for being with us. I should also mention you can check out Jack's writing over at si.com/MLB/Diamondbacks. A lot of great stuff over there. And Jack, anything else that comes to mind as the Diamondbacks set out on another very, very big series over the next few days?
I would just like to make a request to our listeners. Drop a couple of notes to some of your friends. Word of mouth helps us better than anything. If you have anybody out there that you think might enjoy our podcast, please ask them to check out and subscribe.
We really appreciate that. Absolutely. Well, thank you again to all of you for being with us, and we'll be back with another episode of Snakes Territory very, very soon.